are coming in live from Token 2049 Singapore for the third year in a row, and this time we have yet another super interesting guest from the Midnight Foundation. We have their president, Fahmi Syed, who's joining us from Token 2049. Hi Fahmi, how are you doing?
Very well. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for joining our podcast. I'm looking forward to talking a lot about what Midnight Foundation is all about, what they're up to.
Yes.
And between all of this, we got a super interesting news just a few days back about this partnership that Midnight Foundation is doing with Google.
That's right.
So I think we'll strike the gong and we're just going to straight up dive into the partnership. If you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're delighted, very proud to have Google Cloud and the Web3 team supporting us. They're helping with our launch in terms of validator nodes and infrastructure support, not only with the Midnight network and everything we're doing there, but also providing additional credits to potential partners that we bring in and various things like that.
Wow. So Midnight Foundation has, of course, been an inseparable part of the Cardano ecosystem. If you can tell me how it fits into the ecosystem,
Yes.
not just the Cardano ecosystem, but the larger Web3 ecosystem.
Sure, absolutely. So Midnight is a project that's been incubated within Input. So founded by Charles Hoskinson, who essentially is the founder of the Cardano network, the Cardano ecosystem, formerly obviously at Ethereum. So Charles has incubated that within Input, recognizing that as blockchains have evolved from Bitcoin to Ethereum, so freedom to programmability, then to Cardano, Solana, and other networks, which is about scalability, interoperability. We've seen a lot of supply, a lot of new tokens, a lot of new issuances, but where's the real demand? Where's the increase in demand from real world use cases, corporates, individuals alike? And he recognized that the detail missing from that was privacy and identity.
Absolutely.
So with Midnight, we're very much focused on that, enabling privacy within our network for applications, both small, Web3 native or Web2. And we will launch as a Cardano native asset, but the network itself and the foundation are separate.
Right.
We are not part of the Cardano Foundation, although we work very closely with them. We're not part of Input, although we continue to work very closely with Charles. We're a separate foundation, independent, and our goal and mission is to ensure the Midnight network thrives and sees much bigger, larger, widespread adoption.
Absolutely. When we talk about adoption, and it's one of the most commonly used words in Web3, when we talk about adoption, where do you see Midnight stand at the moment, and what are the plans to sort of increase or sort of accelerate adoption in the Web3 space? Yeah,
so there's a few things around the blockchains today which is hindering adoption. So we think privacy is one.
Absolutely.
We talk about DeFi as an evolution of finance. I think about finance as finance, whether you're doing TradFi, FX, equities, fixed income. Blockchain finance is just a different rail to do finance on. But for the large corporates, asset managers who bring real liquidity, real focus, real innovation on top of what we're doing within Web3, you need an ability to KYC your clients.
Absolutely.
Now, we don't want that to be the realms of centralized actors. So smart contract technology within Midnight enables privacy solutions with identity that gateways into different financial products, healthcare products. The partnership we've announced with Google is one of many that will come. What we believe we need to see is making that easier. So for Midnight, one of the other things we've done is look at tokenomics.
Yeah.
How do we improve capacity, access for builders?
Right.
So we're not cannibalizing our asset. So we think of Midnight and being as a blockchain, as a consumption service, consuming technology. Nobody buys technology or buys servers.
Absolutely.
They consume services. So Midnight could be the meta chain, the privacy chain to every other Web3 chain. Why build many different ID solutions on different chains? Why not find a partner who build a single ID solution that every other chain can use, whether it's for DeFi, healthcare, AI, or whatever it may be?
Absolutely. So why do you think privacy was overlooked for all of these years and sort of on the backbench? And now, of course, a lot of foundations, including Midnight, is focusing heavily on privacy.
Yes.
What led to that shift?
Well, I think, first of all, this is not something that's just new to Web3. This was an issue with Web2. Tim Berners-Lee, who's one of the founders of the World Wide Web, he said one of the mistakes they made when they designed the original internet was not put identity there. It would have prevented fraud and other issues on the internet by 80 to 90% plus. So when Bitcoin gave us that acknowledgement that you could have freedom, the ability to have a store of value, to have peer-to-peer transactions across borders without censorship, without intermediation, everybody thought that was wonderful. And everybody took the anonymity or pseudo-anonymity that cryptography gave as a form of privacy or as a form of data protection. And what I think people have realized is if you are on a public blockchain using wallets and addresses, through the right analytic firms, 90% of users will be doxxed, will be identified. For big corporates, that's a big hindrance.
Yeah.
And also in the past in Web3, when they've looked at privacy, it's been considered as a way of avoiding regulation, avoiding KYC, AML, and that gives concerns to, again, corporates coming in. Who are they transacting with?
Right.
So it's time we took back privacy and owned our privacy. It's a fundamental right, both as an individual, as a human, as a corporate, the right to own your data and to share that. At Midnight, we think about zero knowledge and proofs being a way to sharing information without disclosing personal details or corporate details. And with our smart contract technology, opening up that through disclosure. So we think of it like privacy by default, disclosure by choice. And that empowers the user, whether that's an individual, a corporate, or even machines, as we think about agentic AI and beyond.
Yep. Of course, I think empowering users is the end goal of technology and should have been, but that sort of got missed out in the rat race that has been going on for quite a few years now. When we talk about this current partnership that has happened between Google and Midnight, of course, Google is known for their centralization. They have been criticized quite a bit for data privacy related issues, but we hope to see a new dawn when we look at the partnership with Midnight. How do you think this is going to work out for the Web3 folks or Web3 builders?
Yeah, so when I think about Web3, I was in New York earlier this year and I said, look, the things like the Genius Act, stablecoins, RWAs, real world assets, tokenization, very thematic. You know, we've gone through the meme coin cycle, we've gone through the NFT cycle. Right now, stablecoins and RWA seems to be the one that's attracting a lot of attention, a lot of investment, a lot of liquidity. But the Genius Act, if you read into it, talks about KYC solutions. How many blockchains, public blockchains, really have those solutions today? What does that mean for those blockchains? So actually, it favors the larger corporations, the larger banks. And the advent of the Genius Act resulted in big US investment banks and others across the world announcing their plans for a stablecoin. So what I said to the Web3 audience in New York earlier this year was, we have to adopt this new wave of institutional flow. We have to take the innovation that has led to the boom of this industry and merge it with regulatory solutions. Intelligent regulation will help Web3, will help blockchains. And we think with Midnight, as a permissioned public chain, bringing privacy enabling solutions and tools with smart contract disclosures, we can bring native Web3 builders who could be the next generation, the next evolution. So as large corporations look to adopt this and work on this, they find natural partners in the space, hopefully at Midnight.
Right. You briefly spoke about regulations.
Yes.
How that has been something that has left entrepreneurs stranded quite a few times. But how have different entrepreneurs sort of navigated this, I'd say, rabbit hole of regulations in Web3, and what has worked out for Midnight so well as a global organization?
Sure. So I think it's very difficult for entrepreneurs when there is a mindful of regulation, especially in an industry which is global.
Absolutely.
I spent over 2 decades in the financial industry, and regulation was constantly evolving, constantly changing. The financial crisis led to a lot of changes around how banks operate, but also how hedge funds and asset managers operated. Unfortunately, in those environments, you have a bank of lawyers, a bank of compliance experts. I think in this space where startups are constantly thinking about how they evolve, where they invest resource, time, money, that's often an overlooked angle. It's an area that we're here to change things. Now, you can either try and change things from the outside or change things from within. So I think as an industry, we have to get better at recognizing that having good lawyers, good compliance people, and having engagements from within regulators, governments, will help us move forward. We need to educate them to get better regulations.
Absolutely.
If we're not educating those people, not speaking to those people, they will adopt regulation that is contradictory to our beliefs in terms of decentralization and handing power back to individuals. One of those things is explaining what those ZK proofs mean. Why is a proof good enough attestation in opening and unlocking regulated finance, regulated healthcare? We shouldn't be putting data on public chains. That is a minefield for a risk for hackers, for other observers who are looking at that. we need to get to a place where we blend the innovation of Web3 with the innovation within ZK and regulations and compliance.
Fahmi, you've been in this space for quite a bit. Of course, before this, you were with Input Output, and now you're with Midnight. But before that, you've had an illustrious career as well. What was that one switch that sort of made you to join Web3 or enter Web3? And you also mentioned that it's always better to change things from inside, and I'm sure, and we're glad that you decided to change things from inside. If you can talk a little bit about your career, how did you make that switch? What piqued your interest into Web3?
Yeah. So I was very lucky. When I was in my early 20s, I joined a small hedge fund called Marshall Wace. And they were driven by innovation. Not only financial innovation, but looking after their clients and making good returns, but technology innovation. How do you use smart quant researchers, quant implementation, software developers to build good process? I've always been in a place surrounded by people who were thinking ahead of where the current situation was. And then I spent a lot of time there. Then I took some time out to be with family, and then I came back to help launch a hedge fund from a former Citadel CIO in Europe. That was a very successful launch. But when I was looking at the evolution of hedge funds and what was happening, although I really enjoyed the experience in both those environments, was what was I learning? How do I evolve? How do I make what I'm doing relevant to not only myself, but my children and the next generation? So when I was approached by Gavin Wood, Polkadot Parity, to go into this space, initially I was hesitant, but then I realized, this technology really opens up not only financial rails, but how other businesses, sectors, industries work, but also how the fabric of society can change. How do we own our identity? How do we let our identity evolve into a technology that opens gateways for us, whether that's borders, whether that's healthcare, whether that's financial opportunities and beyond. And that's what really got me here. And I've been really fortunate that I was in a great environment with Gavin and his team. And then when Charles asked me to join Midnight, I saw that privacy was that missing piece that we needed.
Absolutely. We've been talking about decentralized identity for quite some time now, and you briefly mentioned identity while we were talking. If you can shed a little bit light on how decentralized identity could work, and is this something that you guys are looking into?
Yeah, so there's a number of things that we're doing in terms of partnerships. So maybe rather than focus on decentralized, how do we look at decentralized technology as a whole and bring others in? So one of the things we're looking at is how, in the financial world, right now the crypto rails are very clunky. In fact, if anything, they've gone a little bit back. How collateral's managed, how settlement's managed. We talk about atomic settlement, but the actual credit risk management around that is not as atomic as it should be. So one of the things Midnight's looking at is how do you present proof of your collateral in a very up-to-date format without exposing the actual details of the portfolio. So you provide the characteristics and properties, not the actual names in your portfolio. How do you prove that portfolio sits with accredited, trusted counterparts? And how do you present that as proof to lenders, borrowers to open up more leverage, more opportunities, and provide more real-time risk management around that? So there's things that in the traditional financial world that doesn't exist. We think not only solving that, Midnight helps crypto rails, but also beyond. Healthcare. How do you take healthcare data? How do you take healthcare data without exposing confidential information on chain and do multi-clinical trials? So one set of hospitals can share data and proofs from another hospital or to research facilities that can monetize that then reduces the cost for the patients, insurance premiums. In the UK where I'm from, reduces tax burdens on the public. So there's things like that we're evolving. Right now, the focus from our team is on 4 sectors. Finance, and we call it finance. We don't call it DeFi or TradFi or CeFi, it's just finance. AI, and how do you prove and validate LLM data, LLM configurations are genuine, your data is being used in the right way, or the proof around that. Healthcare, which we just mentioned, and GovTech. GovTech, whether that's on-chain or more traditional. With driver IDs, voting applications. How do you prove that you voted without, again, disclosing that I voted Republican, Democrat, or whatever it may be?
What sort of adoption do you think these sectors are going to see in the years to come, 2-3 years down the lane?
Yeah, look, with all these things, we've got to recognize it took Web2 a long time. We all very used to social media, having everything on your phone, shopping with Amazon or Alipay and others. That took time. It wasn't overnight. So we're probably right now in Web3 at a similar stage to the early 2000s. So there's going to be a lot of new entrants coming in. We've seen a lot of IPOs in space, a lot of new money and investment coming in. So that will boost innovation and the trajectory of things and the speed of delivery. For me, it's partly the technology has been accepted. Right. So we've got over that hurdle. Now it's the regulatory hurdle we need to help manage. But what people need to recognize is blockchain was about decentralization, removing data silos, making it freer, easier to cross borders, to cross sort of silos of data within companies. Yeah, sure. So I think as companies recognize that, they realize they can actually reduce their compliance costs, their settlement costs, their financing research costs, various other things, whichever field they're in. So as they adopt that and recognize their true value, rather than having private chains, that recognize the value of putting some of their data or proof of their data privately on a permissionless chain where they can, one TEE private computing environment can talk with another private computing environment. One clinical trial can talk to another clinical trial without, divulging any trade secrets.
Absolutely. I think a better question to have asked would have been, which sector would see the most drastic change? You already mentioned healthcare, AI, GovTech, and I think there's a lot of scope in all the sectors. Yes. But if you can just pick out one that is going to transform, say, dramatically.
Yeah, so everybody's so focused on finance because that's a natural thing. For me, I think healthcare is a space.
Yeah.
Healthcare, if you think about across the world, we have a growing population. In certain countries, a very young population. In other countries, very old population. So how do we evolve clinical trials? So I would love to, again, just to give you an example, blue sky thinking, in the UK, the NHS is a public service. Everybody has free access to public healthcare, no matter age, wealth, gender, things like that. But it's a burden. Medical costs are going up, pharmaceutical costs, medical technology is increasing in cost, puts a tax burden. That is one of the single largest databases in the world. Wouldn't it be great if the NHS had a digital identity for each of those people who could present proof of their medical trials, medical history, the drugs they've used, various things like that. They can get move it from one hospital to another very easily, but more importantly, they can open up to clinical trials, be part of a data set that could bring money into the NHS, which then funds better delivery and services in the NHS. That's the vision, but that would work not only just for the NHS, but for many other healthcare services, insurers. So it's a place where the technology allows people to increase revenue and simultaneously reduce costs for their clients.
So now with AI in the picture, there have been a lot of buzzwords, but AI for sure isn't a buzzword. It's here to stay, and we've seen the effects of it globally. How do you think AI and blockchain are going to walk hand in hand when we talk about a future?
Yeah, so AI is a delivery and processing service. People use AI to answer questions or to perform a service. But how do you know what you're getting back? How do you know the service you're being delivered is functional, accurate, is eligible? Blockchain is a truth layer. The decentralization of blockchain, it is a truth layer. So AI is not a competitor to blockchain. People should look at AI as a partner to blockchain, or blockchain as a partner to AI. So you get proof that private LLMs talking to each other or presenting information are authorized to do that. Or my data is not being used in a way that I haven't authenticated to be used by or approved of it. So that truth layer is the connective tissue that brings AI, confidential compute, private compute, TE environments together, which then extends to healthcare, finance, and other services.
Right. Of course. Thank you so much for that. And
pleasure.
Of course, we spoke about the Google partnership, and I'm sure there are a lot of other partnerships that are in works. But if you can sort of lay down a roadmap for Midnight Foundation, this is, of course, the last quarter, and we're, of course, jumpstarting it with an amazing event right here.
Yes.
But what is in plans for Midnight Foundation, not just for this last quarter, but, of course, the next year?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of our glacier drop. So again, in Midnight, we think with the technology we have, is not just another blockchain, it is the next blockchain. It's going to help not only bring new innovations to our chain, but also connect the other chains that exist. We're not tribalist. We believe that other chains can consume our service and our privacy enabling solutions, so can Web2 corporates and beyond. For us, the glacier drop has gone very well. We're in the claim phase, the first phase. We just announced, because we've had a high demand from a lot of partners, as well as some technical issues that we've now resolved. We've extended it by another 2.5 weeks, so there's still time for people to come and claim. We've extended to 8 ecosystems, so not just Cardano, we extended to Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, and beyond. And then when that ends, I guess into the scavenger mine where anybody can come and claim the remainder. And then beyond that, we get to our token generating event.
Yep.
We get to mainnet as we go through into next year. And then partners will slowly come on board as we release features that we look at. And beyond that, one of the things we're exploring with partners that we're speaking to is how do we future-proof blockchains? Today, we're talking about privacy, and that's come back thematically. But one of the things we have to look at is the US government and beyond in other governments are looking at the threat and advantage of quantum computing. And we know that's the threat to blockchains as they are today. So how do you future-proof that? So there are works we're doing with other partners that we'll announce hopefully in the coming days and weeks that also look beyond not only our launch, but what we're doing beyond our launch that future-proofs how our technology is used by our partners.
Absolutely. Fahmi, finally, you of course had a hedge fund, and now you're working with a lot of entrepreneurs. One thing that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with in the Web3 space is right direction. And for your closing statement, if you can give maybe a few guiding lines for young entrepreneurs in the Web3 space, which I'm sure you'll meet a lot outside.
Yeah, look, I would say to anybody who's just building, whether it's in Web3, Web2, or wherever, focus.
Yeah.
Focus on what is your main goal. Don't get distracted by other things. Have that end goal and figure out how you get that journey to deliver you to that point. But be flexible that journey will not be a straight line, that journey might take you on slight detours. So surround yourself with good people, good advisors. If you're building in tech, don't assume tech alone will solve all the world's problems. Yeah. Find a good business partner with that. So lawyer, a CFO, somebody who takes care of the business matters while you focus on delivering your tech. And if you do that single-minded focus with support for the other things that come your way, I'm sure you'll achieve success.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that.
Pleasure.
It was my pleasure interviewing you and having you on the Coin Republic. And we hope to see you really soon on our podcast.
Yeah, hope so. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much.